There is a small glass bottle that sits on more American tables than salt and pepper combined. It has a red cap, a diamond-shaped label, and it has been in continuous production since 1868. You have probably shaken it over eggs, over pizza, over things you are not proud of at 2 in the morning. But here is what most people never think about. Every hot sauce you have ever used carries a story inside it. A war, a refugee, a revolution, a colonial ship crossing the Atlantic. The bottle looks simple. The history is anything but. Today, we are going to open all of them. Tabasco. Shake a bottle of Tabasco and hold it up to the light. The liquid is thin, almost watery, the color of a sunset over red clay. It moves like vinegar, because it mostly is vinegar. Uncap it, and the smell hits you before your nose even gets close. Sharp, sour, with a pepper heat underneath, that your body already knows is coming. The K is quick and clean. It arrives, spreads across your tongue, and then it leaves. No long aftertaste, no lingering burn, just a bright flash of heat, and then silence. Edmund McIlhenny was not trying to change the world in 1865. He was just trying to recover from a war that had taken everything. McIlhenny was a banker in Louisiana before the Civil War, married into one of the wealthiest families in the South, living on Avery Island, a strange geological formation in the Louisiana Bayou that sits on a massive underground dome of salt. The Confederacy knew about that salt. During the war, Union forces occupied Avery Island and mined it aggressively because salt was a military resource, used to preserve meat for soldiers in the field. When the McIlhenny family finally returned to the island after the war, they found their home destroyed and their land gutted. What was left were a few pepper plants, red ones. Capsicum annuum, most likely, growing wild near the ruins of what had been a prosperous plantation. McIlhenny ground those peppers with Avery Island salt, let the mash sit for 30 days, then mixed in French white wine vinegar, and strained the result through a cloth. He bottled it in used perfume bottles, the only small glass containers he could find, and gave samples to merchants and friends. The response was immediate. By 1869, he had orders from across the South. He filed a patent in 1870, named the sauce Tabasco after a Mexican state, and the McIlhenny Company was born. What most people do not know is that every bottle of Tabasco still follows a process that takes 3 years. The peppers are mashed, mixed with Avery Island salt, and packed into white oak barrels, the same kind used for Kentucky bourbon. Those barrels are sealed with salt and stored in a warehouse on the island for 3 years before the vinegar is ever added. The bourbon aging process that lives inside those second-hand barrels changes the pepper mash in ways that a factory shortcut cannot replicate. The workers who harvest the peppers still use a small painted wooden stick, called the little red stick, to compare each pepper's color to the ideal shade. If the pepper matches the stick, it gets picked. If it does not, it stays on the vine another day. The United States military has been including Tabasco in soldier rations since World War I. NASA put it in astronaut meal kits because taste perception drops significantly in zero gravity. You need something strong enough to cut through the sensory dampening of space. The McIlhenny family still owns the company. They are now in their 5th generation. The island, the salt, the barrels, the little red stick, none of it has changed. Tabasco ends up everywhere Americans do not expect it. Bloody Marys, raw oysters on the half shell, eggs scrambled in cast iron at 6 in the morning. It is the hot sauce that lives on the table like a condiment. Not a choice. Frank's RedHot. If Tabasco is a flash of heat, Frank's RedHot is a warm wave. Thicker than Tabasco, but still pourable. Orange red, with a smell that leads with vinegar and follows with cayenne pepper. The burn sits at medium, enough to notice, not enough to make you put the fork down. There is a saltiness to it that makes everything taste more like itself, and that quality is exactly why one woman in Buffalo, New York, accidentally changed American food culture in 1964. Frank's RedHot was already 44 years old when that happened. The sauce was created in 1920 in Louisiana. A straightforward combination of aged cayenne peppers, vinegar, water, salt, and garlic powder. It sold moderately, quietly, the way a lot of regional condiments do, before something outside their control turns them into something else entirely. Teresa Bellissimo did not set out to create a cultural institution on a Friday night in October 1964. Her son Dominic worked at the Anchor Bar in Buffalo, and a delivery mistake left the kitchen with a full shipment of chicken wings. Not chicken breasts, not thighs, but wings, which at the time were considered such a low-value cut that most restaurants used them for stock. Dominic's friends were coming in late and hungry. Teresa needed to feed them with what she had. She deep-fried the wings, melted butter in a pan, poured in Frank's RedHot, and tossed the wings in the sauce until they were glossy and red and smelled like something completely new. She served them with celery sticks and blue cheese dressing, because that was what was in the refrigerator. Nobody went home that night and immediately understood that American bar food had just been reinvented. But word spread. The wings went on the Anchor Bar menu. People drove across the city to try them. Then people drove across the state. Buffalo wings became a dish. Frank's RedHot became the canonical sauce for making them. The recipe most bartenders still use today is 2 parts Frank's RedHot to 1 part melted butter. The Super Bowl has become the single largest buffalo wing consumption event in the country. During Super Bowl Sunday, Americans eat an estimated 1.3 billion chicken wings. Not million, billion. Frank's RedHot is present in the overwhelming majority of them, either in restaurant kitchens or in homes where someone is standing over a saucepan at halftime. In 2009, Frank's RedHot released a commercial featuring an elderly woman who used the sauce on everything and expressed her devotion to it in one blunt sentence that immediately became a meme. The line was profane and perfectly accurate, and the company printed it on t-shirts and did not apologize. McCormick, the spice company, bought Frank's RedHot in 2017 for $4.2 billion. That number tells you something about what one woman in Buffalo accidentally built. Cholula. Cholula comes in a bottle with a wooden cap. Not actual wood, it is molded plastic made to look like wood. But on a shelf of identical glass bottles with identical metal caps, it is the one your eye lands on first. The sauce inside is a deep red-brown, thicker than Frank's, with a smell that is earthier and smokier and less aggressively vinegary. The heat is gentle. You can use a lot of it. That is the point. The name comes from a city in Mexico, Cholula, in the state of Puebla, and that city has a secret that most tourists walk right past. There is a hill in Cholula with a Spanish colonial church sitting on top of it. The church was built in 1594. What the Spanish built it on top of is the largest pyramid in the world by volume, larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, though much less tall, because it was built wide rather than high. Over centuries, the pyramid became so overgrown with vegetation that by the time the Spanish arrived, it looked like a natural hill. They built a church on what they believed was solid ground. Underneath it, buried in dirt and jungle, was one of the ancient world's most monumental structures. The city of Cholula has been continuously inhabited for over 2,000 years. The sauce bearing that city's name uses 2 peppers that most American hot sauces ignore. Arbol peppers are thin and sharp, with a clean, direct heat. Picun peppers are small, the size of a corn kernel, but carry a deeper, nuttier flavor underneath the burn. Most hot sauces are built around a single pepper variety, which means the heat and the flavor move in lockstep. Cholula's 2-pepper approach lets the heat and the flavor develop independently, which is why the sauce tastes more dimensional than its modest price point suggests it should. The wooden cap is not just design. Before Cholula, every hot sauce on the shelf looked more or less the same from 5 feet away. The cap created a shape that the eye could identify across a crowded aisle. It is a 40-cent piece of plastic that became worth several $100 million in brand recognition. Jose Cuervo, the tequila company, acquired Cholula in 2020. The following year, McCormick bought it from Cuervo, meaning McCormick now owns both Cholula and Frank's RedHot, which together represent two entirely different philosophies of what a hot sauce is supposed to do. Valentina. If Cholula is the hot sauce on the office break room table, Valentina is the hot sauce on the taco stand cart. The label is yellow and red, thick and old-fashioned looking, with a portrait of a woman in traditional Mexican dress at the center. The sauce inside is dark red, almost maroon, thicker than Louisiana style but still pourable, with a smell that leads with dried anco chile and cascabel pepper before any vinegar announces itself. The heat is mild, the flavor is deep. A bottle of Valentina 370 milliliters costs about $2.50 in most American grocery stores. That price is not a coincidence. Valentina was built to be the hot sauce that everyone could afford, the hot sauce of the market stall and the street corner and the kitchen that feeds 10 people on a budget that most restaurant owners would not believe. The woman on the label is real. Valentina Ramirez Avitia was 15 years old when the Mexican Revolution broke out in 1910, and she disguised herself as a man to join the forces of Pancho Villa. When her true identity was discovered, Villa did not send her home. He promoted her to colonel. She fought through the revolution and lived to old age, and the sauce named after her, created in Guadalajara in 1960, carries her face on every bottle as a declaration about what kind of person drinks Valentina. Not a luxury buyer, a fighter. In Mexico, Valentina outsells Tabasco, Cholula, and every other imported brand by a significant margin. It is the hot sauce of daily life. Mexicans use it on things that American food culture would not immediately associate with hot sauce. Sliced mango and watermelon, popcorn, corn on the cob rolled in cotija cheese, candy on a stick, chips eaten straight from the bag. In Mexican street food culture, the combination of Valentina, lime juice, and chamoy, a salty, sweet, sour condiment made from pickled fruit, is a flavor profile so ingrained it might as well be a food group. Valentina is the hot sauce that never needed a marketing campaign, because it was already everywhere anyone who actually cooked was looking. Sriracha. Squeeze a bottle of sriracha and watch what comes out. It is red, but brighter than Valentina, shinier, with a body that is thick but flows freely. Smell it, and you get garlic first, then sweetness, then pepper, an order that is the opposite of most hot sauces, where heat introduces everything else. The burn builds slowly, lasts longer than Tabasco, and leaves a sweetness behind when it fades. There is a rooster on the bottle. That rooster has a story. David Tran was born in the year of the rooster, according to the Chinese zodiac. He was an ethnic Chinese man living in Vietnam, and in 1978, with the country's political situation making life increasingly dangerous for ethnic minorities, he boarded a refugee ship. The ship was called the Huy Fong, a Cantonese phrase meaning lucky arrival. David Tran eventually reached the United States and settled in Los Angeles, and in 1980, he started making hot sauce from a van. He was making the sauce he had grown up with, a garlic and chili sauce that he felt no American brand was getting right, and he was selling it by hand to Asian restaurants in the Chinatown district. He named his company Huy Fong Foods, after the ship that had carried him to safety. He named the sauce Sriracha, after a coastal city in Thailand, where a similar style sauce originated. He put a rooster on the bottle to mark his birth year. He has never spent $1 on advertising. For 20 years, Sriracha was the condiment of Asian restaurant tables and immigrant kitchen cabinets. Then, somewhere in the 2000s, it crossed over. Food blogs started calling it the best hot sauce in the country. Chefs started adding it to menus. By 2010, Sriracha was in college dining halls and fast food test kitchens and Super Bowl party spreads. By 2013, there was a documentary film about David Tran's life. There were Sriracha-flavored potato chips, Sriracha-scented candles, Sriracha-printed socks, Sriracha phone cases, and a Sriracha costume for Halloween. The rooster had become an American icon. Then the drought hit. Severe water shortages in California and New Mexico through 2022 and 2023 devastated the jalapeno harvest that Huy Fong depends on entirely. Production stopped, then restarted, then slowed. Retailers began limiting how many bottles a customer could buy. People started stockpiling. On eBay, a 28-ounce bottle that retails for $8 was selling for $60, $70, $120. Food writers called it the Sriracha pot. During the shortage, many restaurants switched to other sauces and quietly discovered they preferred them. Many home cooks discovered the same thing. The shortage revealed something that years of abundance had concealed. Sriracha's grip on American hot sauce culture was real, but it was not irreplaceable. Sambal Oelek. Scoop a spoonful of Sambal Oelek and look at it closely. You can see the seeds. You can see the pepper flesh. Nothing has been strained or smoothed into liquid form. This is crushed chili, visible and unashamed about what it is. The color is bright red. The smell is raw pepper without vinegar's interference. The heat is direct and high, and does not pretend to be something polite. The word Oelek, sometimes spelled Ulek, comes from Javanese and Sundanese, the languages of Java and West Java in Indonesia. It means to grind using a mortar and pestle. The kobek, a wide flat stone mortar, and the ulek, the stone pestle, are tools that appear in Indonesian kitchens going back more than 1,000 years. Sambal Oelek in its original form is what happens when you grind fresh red chilies with salt in one of those mortars, and it has been the foundational condiment of Indonesian cooking for at least that long. There are over 300 varieties of sambal across the Indonesian archipelago. Each island, each region, sometimes each village has its own version. Sambal terasi adds fermented shrimp paste. Sambal hijau uses green peppers. Sambal mata from Bali is raw and uncooked, mixed with shallots and lemongrass and served cold. Sambal is not a condiment the way ketchup is a condiment, something applied after cooking to already finished food. Sambal is the base layer of flavor that the meal is built on top of. Huy Fong Foods, the same company that makes Sriracha, also makes Sambal Oelek, and has since its earliest days. The two sauces use the same jalapeno peppers, but where Sriracha adds garlic, sugar, and vinegar to create something balanced and complex, Sambal Oelek adds nothing except salt. No garlic, no sugar, no thickening agents. What you get is pure pepper, which is why professional kitchens often prefer it over Sriracha. Sambal Oelek lets the cook control the final flavor, instead of importing the hot sauce's personality into every dish. When the Sriracha shortage pushed restaurants to find alternatives, Sambal Oelek was one of the first they reached for. Some of them reached for it and realized they had been overlooking the better tool for years. Piri Piri. Pick up a bottle of Piri Piri sauce and the color shifts. Depending on the brand, it might be deep red, orange, or a dark amber that suggests charring and heat in a way that Sriracha's clean red does not. The consistency varies too. Some versions are thin and pourable, others thick enough to use as a marinade. What they share is a smell of fresh, raw bird's eye chili, a specific variety of capsicum frutescens that is noticeably sharper and brighter than cayenne, undercut by lemon, garlic, and sometimes a hint of smoke. The bird's eye chili did not originate in Portugal. It originated in the Americas, traveled to Europe with Columbus in the 15th century, and spread to Africa through Portuguese colonial trade routes. The Portuguese established colonial footholds in Mozambique and Angola, and in those territories they encountered a small wild pepper that local people had been using in cooking and medicine long before European ships arrived. The Portuguese called it Piri Piri, picking up the Swahili and Ronga word for pepper. They began using it, cultivating it, building recipes around it, and the most important of those recipes was a marinade for grilled chicken. Frango Piri Piri, grilled chicken marinated in crushed piri piri pepper with lemon and garlic and olive oil. became the national dish of Portugal. Every town along the Algarve coast has a restaurant that claims its version is the original or the best. When Portuguese immigrants spread across the world, they brought the recipe with them. When South African immigrants opened a small restaurant in Johannesburg in 1987 and called it Nando's, they were carrying that same tradition. Nando's has more than 1,200 locations in 35 countries now. In the United Kingdom, it is not just a restaurant chain, it is a cultural institution. Cheeky Nando's entered British slang as a phrase for an impulsive, unplanned meal with friends, a spontaneous treat, the kind of thing you do when nothing has been organized and someone suggests it, and everyone immediately agrees. The Piri Piri pepper itself is significantly hotter than cayenne. Most commercial Piri Piri sauces sold in American supermarkets substitute milder peppers to keep the heat accessible. The original, made with the actual African bird's eye chili, is something else entirely. Harissa. Open a tube or a jar of harissa, and the color is the first surprise. Not bright red, dark red, almost brown at the edges, the color of dried brick or old rust. The smell is smoky before it is spicy, with undercurrents of caraway and coriander that have no equivalent in American or Mexican hot sauces. The texture is paste, not liquid. It does not pour. You spread it, smear it, mix it into other things. The heat builds slowly and stays. Harissa comes from Tunisia, the northernmost country in Africa, and the word itself comes from the Arabic verb harassa, to pound or to crush. The origin story of harissa is also the story of how food moves through colonialism. Chili peppers did not exist in Africa before the 15th century. They were a New World crop. Spanish and Portuguese ships crossing the Atlantic brought peppers back to Europe in the early 1500s, and Portuguese and Spanish trading routes then carried those peppers into North Africa. The people of Tunisia took something new, the chile, and combined it with something ancient, the spice traditions of the Maghreb, the caraway, and coriander and cumin that had been present in North African cooking for centuries, and produced harissa. Every family in Tunisia has a harissa recipe. There is no single standardized version. The ratio of peppers to spices to olive oil shifts from kitchen to kitchen, from grandmother to granddaughter, from coastal town to mountain village. What is standardized is the significance. Tunisia consumes more harissa per capita than any other country on earth. Serving food without harissa in Tunisia is roughly equivalent to serving a meal in Louisiana without any sauce at all. Technically possible, but culturally confusing. In 2022, UNESCO added harissa to its representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. A condiment paste made it to UNESCO. The committee cited not just the food itself, but the social traditions surrounding it, the communal preparation, the passing of recipes across generations, the role harissa plays in defining Tunisian identity. When French colonial forces occupied Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco in the 19th and 20th centuries, North African immigrants eventually followed the colonial routes in reverse, moving to France in large numbers. Harissa came with them. It is now sold in every French supermarket, used by French chefs in ways Tunisian grandmothers might not recognize, and considered a basic pantry item in a country that once had no word for it. Gochujang. Gochujang does not pour. It does not squeeze. It sits in its container and waits for you to take a spoon to it. Deep red-brown, dense, slightly sticky, with a surface sheen that suggests something alive and fermented underneath. Smell it, and the first impression is sweet, then salty, then a long, warm complexity that is closer to miso or aged soy sauce than to anything in the Tabasco family. But it arrives last, after the sweetness and the umami have already made their case. The most surprising fact about gochujang is also the most important one. Korea did not have chili peppers until the 16th century. The entire flavor profile that defines Korean cuisine, the red kimchi, the gochujang marinated meats, the tteokbokki, the bibimbap, was built on an ingredient that arrived within the last 500 years. Chili peppers came to Korea around the time of the Imjin War, the Japanese invasion of 1592. The exact route is disputed. Some historians say Japanese troops brought peppers from the Portuguese trade networks they had been in contact with. Others argue the peppers arrived directly through Chinese trade. What is not disputed is that by the 1700s, gochujang appeared in Korean medical and culinary texts as an established fermented paste made from ground red chili, meju, fermented soybean blocks, glutinous rice, and salt. The fermentation process is what separates gochujang from every other hot sauce in this video. Gochujang is not just seasoned. It is transformed over time. The ingredients are combined and packed into ongi, traditional Korean clay pots, which are set outside to ferment in natural sunlight. The UV exposure, the temperature fluctuations between day and night, the particular ambient microbes of the outdoor environment, all of these contribute to a fermentation that factory-controlled environments cannot fully replicate. Traditional families still make gochujang at home in the spring, and the paste deepens and develops over months of outdoor aging. The town of Suncheon in North Jeolla Province has been producing what many Koreans consider the finest gochujang in the country for centuries. The combination of its specific climate, its water source, and the traditional ongi aging method produces a paste with a geographical identity protected under Korean law. Suncheon gochujang carries the same regional designation that champagne carries in France. The Korean wave, the global spread of Korean film, music, and television, brought gochujang to kitchens that had never heard of it. Parasite won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 2020. Squid Game became the most-watched Netflix series in history in 2021. American home cooks began experimenting with Korean ingredients, and gochujang followed the cultural current into mainstream supermarkets. TikTok food creators discovered that adding a spoonful of gochujang to butter pasta created something between Italian and Korean that was unlike either. The video format spread the recipe to millions of people in a week. Sales of gochujang in the United States increased by 40% between 2020 and 2023. Gochujang is not going back to specialty stores. It is in the grocery aisle now, next to the soy sauce, and it is not leaving. Ghost pepper. You will not find a bottle of pure ghost pepper sauce at a normal grocery store. You will find bottles that say ghost pepper on the label, that use ghost pepper as one ingredient among many, diluted, blended, carefully managed, because an undiluted ghost pepper sauce would be, legally and practically speaking, a product that most people cannot finish without medical concern. The bhut jolokia grows in Nagaland, Assam, and Manipur, the northeastern states of India that border Myanmar, tucked between the mountains and the plains in a region that most of the world has never visited. The name bhut jolokia comes from the Bhutia people of the region. Jolokia means pepper in Assamese, bhut means ghost, or possibly it means Bhutan, where a similar pepper grows. The etymology is contested. The heat is not. In 2007, Guinness World Records officially confirmed what local scientists had been reporting for years. Bhut jolokia was the hottest pepper in the world. The measurement is done in Scoville heat units, a scale created by American pharmacist Wilbur Scoville in 1912. A standard jalapeno measures between 2,500 and 8,000 Scoville units. A cayenne pepper reaches roughly 30,000 to 50,000. Bhut jolokia tested at over 1 million Scoville units. It was not just the hottest pepper that had ever been measured. It was the first pepper to break the 1 million Scoville threshold in recorded history. The Indian military was paying attention. Beginning in the late 2000s, India's Defense Research and Development Organization developed grenades packed with powdered bhut jolokia, non-lethal crowd dispersal weapons, intended to flush out suspects from enclosed spaces and incapacitate without permanent injury. Ghost pepper grenades entered the Indian Army's arsenal. They are real. They have been used. In Nagaland and the surrounding states, bhut jolokia had been used for centuries, long before anyone measured it. People rubbed it on fences to keep wild elephants away from crops. It appeared in regional curries in small quantities, more as a medical ingredient than a flavor one. Bhut jolokia was used in traditional Naga medicine for stomach ailments and circulation. The idea of eating it for pleasure or for sport was an outside concept that arrived once the Guinness record was announced. After 2007, the world came to Nagaland. Spice companies, exporters, food journalists, competitive eaters on YouTube, bloggers documenting their own apparent suffering for views. All of them arrived wanting Bhut jolokia. The export trade for the pepper grew significantly, bringing income to farming communities in one of India's poorest regions through the simple mechanism of growing something that hurt more than anything anyone had ever tasted. Bhut jolokia held the world record until 2011, when it was surpassed by the Trinidad moruga scorpion. Then came the Carolina Reaper in 2013, bred specifically to break records. Then Pepper X, developed by the same man who bred the Reaper, now measuring nearly 2.7 million Scoville units, more than twice the heat of the ghost pepper that started the modern obsession. But records are not the point. The point is what Bhut jolokia revealed when it broke that first barrier, that the world had been assuming it already knew the outer edges of what a pepper could do, and it was wrong. The ghost pepper did not just change the Scoville chart, it opened a door that no one has managed to close since. Every one of these sauces traveled to your table through a chain of events that had nothing to do with condiments. A war left a man with nothing but pepper plants. A boat carried a refugee across an ocean. A woman improvised dinner for a group of hungry college kids on a Friday night. A colonial ship introduced a crop to a continent that made it into something the colonizers never imagined. A fermented paste aged in a clay pot under the sun for months, then traveled across the world on a cultural wave that started with a television show. The bottle looks simple. It always does. That is the thing about hot sauce. You reach for the same bottle you have reached for 100 times, and somewhere inside it, someone's entire story is waiting.